Hello and welcome to Safe Pasture. I'm Sherry Hammers and we are continuing on our study of Andrew Murray's book, The Holiest of All. We left off with chapter 5 last time, and so today we're going to jump right into chapter 6, The Son, the Only Begotten. Our scripture of study today is Hebrews 1 verse 5 and 6, and that reads, "For unto which of the angels said he at any time, Thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee? And again, I will be to him a father, and he shall be to me a son. And again, when he bringeth in the first begotten into the world, he saith, And let all the angels of God worship him." So Andrew says here, the angels could tell of God and of life. We kind of touched on this last time. The Son is that life of God and gives it. He that hath the Son hath life. And he goes back again. He says, "And when he again bringeth in the firstborn into the world, he saith, And let all the angels of God worship him." The Psalm speaks of Jehovah coming to redeem his people. The Son is so one with the Father that as the Father works only through him and can only be known in him, the worship can only arise to God through him too. The angels worship the deliverer as Jehovah. As I was reading that, and it says, that the Father can only work through the Son. He can only redeem his people through the Son. The Son is so at one with the Father that the Father only works through him and can only be known through him and in him. And the worship can only rise through him. It made me think about in John 14:6, Jesus saith unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. And so God's telling the angels in Hebrews 1, let all the angels of God worship him, because that's the only, Jesus is to be worshiped, and he's the only way that worship can be gotten through to God. But going back to Jesus being the narrow gate, John 14:6, Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and life. It made me think about Jesus is the narrow gate, not only for salvation, because we usually think about him, he's the narrow gate. If we want to get saved, we have to come to Jesus through the narrow gate for salvation. But everything else, like prayer, worship, miracles, everything is through that narrow gate. And if you recall, God said that we're to be holy as he is holy. Well, holiness requires a setting apart, which means that it is a narrow path, because you're not going to be participating in everything that the world is participating in. They're on the wide road to destruction, but you're on the narrow path. So holiness and setting yourself apart is part of this. And anyway, Andrew goes on to say, Christ is the Son of God. What does this mean to us, and what is the blessing it brings our faith? It points us first to the great mystery that God has a Son. This is the mystery of divine love, and that in a double sense. Because God is love, he begets a Son, to whom he gives all he is and has himself, and in whose fellowship he finds his life and delight, through whom he can reveal himself, with whom he shares the worship of all his creatures. And because God is love, this Son of God becomes the Son of Man. Now track here with me, with Andrew. What he's saying is, so God, he shares the worship of all his creatures with the Son, and the Son is God. But then the Son becomes man. So the Son of God becomes the Son of Man, and the Son of Man, having been perfected forevermore, enters through death and resurrection into all the glory that belonged to the Son of God. I never thought of it like that. Like Jesus, people talk about the incarnation when Jesus came, took on a human body, and so it was God in the flesh, Emmanuel, God with us. But he became a Son of Man. Then he enters through death and resurrection into all the glory that belonged to the Son of God. So now man and God are being joined together through death and resurrection, not just in having the commonality of both being human, God coming as a human, but now he enters through death and resurrection into all the glory that belonged to the Son of God. And Andrew goes on to say, and now this Son of God is to us the revelation, the bearer of the love of the divine being. In him the love of God dwells in us. In him we enter and rest in it. When God speaks to us in this his Son, it is the infinite love imparting itself to us, becoming the inward life of our life. In eternity it was a birth. In the resurrection it was a birth from the dead. And so it is only by a divine birth that the Son, that the love of God can enter and possess us. And I'm telling you, this stuff is just amazingly profound. I'm going to repeat that last little paragraph because I think it was really good. In eternity, it was a birth. In the resurrection, it was a birth from the dead. And so it can only be by a divine birth that the Son, that the love of God can enter and possess us. So we're looking at birth being the vehicle or the entrance into a new realm. When you think about Jesus coming in the human body, he was born into a human body. That was a new realm of existence. Then in the resurrection, he experienced a birth from being dead. That was a new realm. He's now in a new body. And then the only way we can come in to this new realm is by a divine birth, that the Son, the love of God, can enter and possess us. Oh, that was a lot. So here's a little note I wrote myself in the middle of all of this. Jesus, in order to redeem us, had to be born in the flesh and then born out of death. So he was the firstborn from the dead. Remember, he was firstborn. So we too must be born in the flesh and then be born out of death by the new birth. Then Andrew goes on to say, we must, above all, learn to know Jesus better. The general knowledge we had of him before and at conversion is not enough for a strong and healthy growth. I want to stop right there. How many people think, I've walked an aisle, I've said a prayer, got my ticket to heaven, I'm good to go. And, with all this once saved, always saved, without understanding what the scriptures really say. I totally agree with Andrew. The general knowledge we had of him before and at conversion is not enough for strong and healthy growth. What I just described to you about walking an aisle and all of that, hopefully that was a true birth and not just going through the motions, because like we said in the last episode, God, maybe I didn't say it in the last episode, it might have been a few back, but God's concerned about the heart. So when you come to him and you don't have a sincere heart, or maybe you have ulterior motives, so your heart is for sure not sincere. But if you come with the wrong motive and the wrong heart, then you just went through the motions and you've deceived yourself into thinking that you are saved. But let's say you are saved. If you don't move on from that, he said it's not enough for a strong and healthy growth. Think about a baby. If a baby just got born into the world and was like, okay, I'm here, I'm good, I'm good to go, I'm alive in this world. Well, that baby, if the baby does not continue to do the things that are necessary for growth, that baby won't thrive, it won't grow. And of course, the first thing that's going to happen is it's going to get weak. And so Andrew says here, God desires that we come to a close friendship, to an intimate acquaintance with his beloved Son, that we should be the loving, happy witnesses of how completely he can save. Let us do so. Right there's another one. Are you this shining, happy witness of how God completely saves? I mean, we all struggle with it, right? If something doesn't go our way, we're grumbling and complaining. But if we're doing that, and I'm telling you, I'm being convicted right now in my life, like Am I murmuring and complaining? And if I am, then that means that I don't have my eyes on God. I don't have my eyes on all that's been given to me, all that I've been blessed with in ways I probably couldn't even count if I tried. So that tells me if we're not loving, happy witnesses of how he can completely save us, like Andrew was saying, then we are not in a close friendship or intimate acquaintance with his beloved Son. Remember, your relationship with God, it's very fluid. I mean, it's kind of like the tides. It, ebbs and flows. It rolls in, it rolls out. And it will do that if we are not diligent to constantly keep ourselves in a close relationship with God. If we're not nurturing that relationship. So I'm just saying it's not static. Like you're not, one and done. It's not like that. It's like if you have a garden and you're like, yep, planted everything, watered everything, I should be good for a while. Well, hopefully, even if it rains and you're not watering it, and it rains, then your plants might be doing okay, but they might be fighting for room because of all the weeds that have now grown up. And that's the way it is with our relationship with God. We live in a world that is hostile to all that God is. And if we are not fighting every day to maintain this close relationship with God, then it's not going to be, it's not going to thrive. I've said it before, are you a salmon that's fighting against the current to make it to where you're trying to get to? Or are you just a dead fish going downstream with the current? And the current that I'm talking about is the world system and all the temptations that go along with living in a fallen world. Going on with what Andrew says, he said, remembering that angels and prophets could only point to him who was to come, that the words of Scripture and even of Christ himself only profit as they waken the expectancy of something higher. So, the words of Scripture and even of Christ himself, they only can profit us as they waken in us the expectancy of something higher. He says, let us wait on God to speak in his Son to us. Ooh, let us wait on God. That doesn't sound like it's going to fit into the current culture. Everybody's in a hurry. Everybody's got to have something, instantly, if not yesterday. But God, he's saying, we got to wait on God to hear him speak in his Son to us. God speaking in us will be a mighty act of creative power, a birth of his love within us. Beautiful words by Andrew. And I hope that I'm running out of time. I'm actually a few minutes over time. But that was his take on the only begotten Son of God and how his birth and his first, him being the firstborn from the dead has opened the way for our birth and the entrance into a deep relationship with him. Thank you again for joining me, and I will see you again next time.